Welcome everyone to a Tuesday night edition of the Allen Powell Show. We have NBA champs crowned, and my guest that's coming on, I think he got this one wrong, and he got some explaining to do. How he got that wrong. But we also gonna have part 2 of the interview, talking about the coaching journey of the guest that I have, Coach Travis Lewis, and just tell me what y'all think about the NBA Finals as a whole, and what's going to go forward for the Denver Nuggets. So with all that being said, let's get ready to lock and load, people. Let's go.
Load, Allen Powell. It's the Allen Powell Show. Where we lock and load. Come on. It's the Allen Powell Show. Where we lock and load. Come on. It's the Allen Powell Show. Where we lock and load. It's the Allen Powell Show. Where we lock and load. Come on.
We are back once again Tuesday night. NBA champs are crowned. The NBA season is officially over. And we're going to break down the game last night and talk about what's going on in the future for the Denver Nuggets. We have special guests in the building. I got to give this brother a proper introduction. I feel like I didn't do him correctly last. So I want to just go down a little bit of some of the accolades and some of the things that this brother has done. 2017 AP Ohio All Northwest District Coach of the Year. 2017 also, he's a track coach of the year, and currently the assistant coach at Cleveland State University. Mr. Travis Lewis is back. Thank you, my brother. I did not know that you was also a track coach of the year. That's something we did not discuss at all. That's just amazing to me that you was coaching track, man. Let's talk about that for a second.
No, man, that's the name of our conference, the Three Rivers Athletic Conference. That was the name of the conference.
Well, okay, so
however, I did coach 8th grade track back when I first started my coaching journey, and I was a GA at Eastern Michigan. So
okay,
just a little bit of everybody.
Coaching, it's good. You finding out something new. Okay, but it's actually the name of the conference. Okay, so you were still coach of the year in that conference.
Correct.
Okay, man. Let's get to it. The series is over. We got NBA champs. Nuggets win it in 5, a gentleman's sweep. You picked the Heat in 5. Just let's go back to Game 5, and I think at this point, this is where, at the point of the series where you kind of know what's going on at this point. Since the last time I had you on, Miami lost both games in Miami, and then they come back and they lose a low-scoring game. What was your thoughts about Game 5 in total?
Man, first of all, when they won Game 2, I think I had the whole world thinking.
You did.
Like, oh, he may have something.
You did.
Definitely took for granted the length of Denver, right? They had great team length,
right?
Which was able to propel them through the series, along with two very, very good players in Joker and in Jamal Murray. So when you got to Game 5 back at home, with it being so electric in the building,
yes,
it was almost like, man, if we can prolong this thing, fine. But it was sink or swim for Miami, and it was tough because they really couldn't get going as an offensive unit in this series.
Yes. I wrote down some notes from Game 5, some stuff that stuck out to me. And once again, from your coach's perspective, I want to know if you would have done anything different, and did you see the same thing? So first thing, let's start from the first quarter. Jokic picked up 2 fouls. Gordon picked up 2 fouls. And in that time span, it looked like Bam was getting whatever he wanted against a smaller Jeff Green. But they didn't pull away. They didn't take full advantage of the foul trouble that the Nuggets was in early. Is it something that they could have did differently while those two were out? Or what did you see when they got in foul trouble that early?
Man, one of the biggest things is that they didn't shoot the free throw well. I mean, it was a time Butler went to the free throw line and missed both.
Right.
So, I mean, continuing to attack the rim, and then just capitalizing on offensive opportunities. But those are the reasons that they had a chance to win late because it was a low scoring game because both of those guys ended up being in foul trouble.
Right. Right. Um, they got foul trouble early. They couldn't take advantage of it. I will say this: when I was watching the game, though, it was great effort on both sides. It reminded me of an old school 90s Eastern Conference game. You usually not 94-89, I believe, was the final score. Another person that I want to talk about, Michael Porter Jr. He was shooting terrible, but I felt like he was able to get to the basket where he can affect the game in a different way. What did you see from his game, being that he was shooting bad?
Man, one, he didn't settle and continue to shoot, but most importantly, he was the X factor when you talk about how important their length was. I think the number one thing for the entire series is how long Denver was.
Yes.
When you look at Joker on the court, he looked like a man playing amongst boys. Yes. When you look at the length from 1 through 5 and the first couple subs off the bench, they were just so much longer. And Michael Porter Jr. was the primary culprit in that, right? He was the one that just when you thought you had great matchups, he just had a size advantage or athletic advantage over the guys from Miami.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. The size definitely showed up and showed out. When you look at Jokic 7 foot, Aaron Gordon 6'9", 6'10", Michael Porter Jr. 6'10". I'm pretty sure his wingspan probably like 7 foot.
Yeah.
So that's a tall front line that and Miami is small. Bam is 6'9" at best.
At best.
And we seen the mismatch in the first game is that's when they put in Kevin Love to try to offset the size a little bit, but even he couldn't do nothing with the size.
I think there are two things that you can counter, right? That's hard to counter. Size is hard to counter,
yes,
and speed is hard to counter. Mm-hmm. Now, the equalizer is that when you shoot the ball really, really well, you can equalize size. When you move the ball really, really well, you can equalize speed. Right. Miami didn't have their best shooting series that they've had in series prior. And then obviously speed wasn't a factor because of the size. But even for us at Cleveland State, man, I felt like last year one of the reasons we were able to win 21 games was because of how long we were. So when I seen Denver, I'm like, man, they got the same advantage that we had. Because you can make up for mistakes. If you get beat off the dribble, your length can alter a shot. If you miss a box out, your length can get a deflection or a tip to get a second chance opportunity. Like, it's so important to have either length or speed.
And I totally agree because I look at Jokic, man, and I think we talked about this last time you was here. He's not the greatest defender, but the fact that he's so long, he can just stick his hands up and bother shots. Like he didn't do anything spectacular defensively. All he had to do was stand in front of somebody and raise his hands, and he caused problems. Like, and you can't teach height. You cannot teach. You can't teach height. So the fact that he was long enough bothers shots when he didn't even really contest shots. That's the crazy part. Just his length by itself did it.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Some of the things that we talk about as we recruit classes is like, man, with our length being our advantage, we want big guards.
Right.
Right. And if you're not a big guard, then you got to be super, super fast and have a great clip from the outside or something in between. Like, you got to stick out in a specific area. And for us, we've had success. So to watch Denver and see them have success, is an important piece of putting a roster together. And it could be one of the things that helps Denver in the future continue to keep their roster intact as they lose guys, right? Now that you've won a championship, other teams, even if it's guy 8, 9, or 10, they want to be able to take those guys and put them into the locker room to get some of that championship DNA. Yes. But when you bring new guys in, what's their length? What's their size? When you're looking at draft classes, like, how do they fit to help our overall scheme?
I totally agree with you. Everybody that's joining us, comment and share the live so y'all people can see it. We got assistant coach Travis Lewis in the building talking some NBA finals with us. Even on the bench, you got DeAndre Jordan size coming off. They even used Thomas Bryant. That's another size that they got from the Lakers. But I want to ask you about this because this is something that stuck out to me as well. We talk about Jokic not being a great defender, but I also think that he's smart in the fact that even though he got in foul trouble this game, he didn't really get in foul trouble throughout the playoffs and throughout this series. It's like he doesn't aggressively try to defend. And as I look at it, I call it bad defense, but at the same time, it can be smart because he keeps himself out of foul trouble, even though he's not contesting shots all the way. He's not picking up fouls. Do you think that's a strategy of his of, okay, I can contest and possibly pick up fouls, or I can just kind of get in the way a little bit and stay out of foul trouble? Do you think that's part of the strategy, that he actually does it on purpose, or he just doesn't defend well?
Yeah, as a coach, you always look at like what pros and cons that you bring to the conversation, or that you bring to the table, right? So can you dribble, pass, and shoot? Period. And if you can do that, then you can stay on the floor. A lot of times we tell our players, we say, hey, we can get back points. We can't get back fouls. Right? If they come down and they score a 2 because you didn't foul them because you were out of position, that's okay. Because if we have you on the floor on the offensive end, we're going to have the ability to capitalize and have success in the grand scheme of things. So absolutely, he's looking at it from a standpoint of like, man, I need to be on. The most important thing for me to do is to be on the floor.
Yes.
So you're willing, as a coach and as a player, you're willing to take that sacrifice because of all the positive things you bring on the offensive end.
That's a great point, man, because I never looked at it like that at first. But I think the risk reward is, like you say, he's better on the court than in foul trouble trying to contest. And if you look at it, how many times are they going to convert over a long body than you trying to contest and catching fouls? I think the ratio averaged out in his favor, where they're not going to finish more than me contesting, getting fouls, and out of foul trouble. So that's amazing that you actually talk that as well with your players, and I never thought about it until now. I want to talk about Coach Spo, because I felt like he tried his hardest. I felt like he brought out everything. He all the tricks of the trade, zones, pressure defense, different lineups. But at the end of the day, I just feel like he didn't have enough. How do you feel about Coach Spo in this series?
Man, I think that he shot all the bullets that was in the chamber.
Yeah.
Right. And as a coach, like, our ultimate goal is to put you in position to have success. And in this situation, they were just outmanned, and that's okay.
Right.
It's okay to understand you were outmanned. You go back, you reevaluate, like, what areas did we struggle and how can we improve those areas? So for him, it's like, okay, when we look at our draft class, when we look at our free agency, what can we do in order to match the size of guys that were on the other team that fit what we continue to do?
Right. We got Derek Mason checking in, said wasn't interested, happy for Denver. I want to address that comment because it wasn't any high name players, so to speak. No super stars, so to speak, as far as high end names per se. But to me, I was very interested in the series. Do you think the casual fans tuned out because of the two teams that was in it, or did you? How did you think about? What did you think about the series? Was it interesting? I know as a basketball coach, it's probably interesting to you, but what do you think about the casual fan?
I think it has to do with what's hot now, and it was so many, like, this playoff as a whole was so entertaining.
Yes,
where it took away from the finals, right? You talk about LeBron and Steph going at it on the Western Conference Finals.
Right.
You talk about the Heat being up 3-0 and then forcing the game 7 against the Celtics, who had already been in that situation before in the past. You talk about the Nuggets finding a way to breeze through the playoffs, and they had never been to an NBA Finals before. Like, there were so many storylines that you could be interested in, to where by the time you got to the finale, it was like, we feel like Denver gonna win, and then if for some reason it's a game 6 or a game 7, it'll be the most watched game in NBA history.
Right.
So as the narrative began to play out, and Denver went up 2 2-1 and then 3-1, it was inevitable that people was like, man, Denver going to win, and we knew that was going to happen. So it's no longer important or exciting anymore.
It definitely was interesting doing the whole playoff. Like you say, this is the best first round I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. The first round matchups. And the second round matchups is great. So it was definitely some of the best playoffs that I thought about that I enjoyed personally. But man, it was great. It was great. So Tyler Hero, excuse me, man, my nose is running off the chain in this live, y'all. Y'all might hear me sniffing. I might have to go grab some tissue, but it's getting crazy. But Tyler Hero was listed as questionable, but he never played. Some people thought it was just Spo trying to play mind games with Mark Malone. Was he? Do you think he didn't play him because he hasn't played the whole series, or he just couldn't go? What do you think? What happened to Tyler Hero? Because he was the second leading scorer on the team.
Yeah, I think it's risk versus reward. Had the series been tied, then man, let's see if Tyler Hero can go. But once the series isn't tied, as a coach and a coaching staff and an organization, you have to be realistic with the fact that if he was to get pushed back with one game to go in the season, how long that recovery would take and how far that will push us back, right? So more than anything, he dressed, he's going to be ready to go. If it's a situation, last possession of the first quarter, I need to be able to get a shot up, then we'll throw him in there for a possession. But most important, for him to put himself in the mentality and a mindset of what it takes to prepare for an NBA Finals game, right? So for him to get better, how you make him better, knowing that he's going to be with your organization for years to come, is that you help him experience and get the most out of this experience. So when he comes back and he's healthy, he can know how to prepare and not be surprised.
Man, I know they missed him, man, and I guess you didn't really get a chance to see a full Miami, but I still don't think he would have made a difference where they would have won a series. Like you say, I think that at the end of the day, they were just too small, and they can do nothing with Jokic. I want to talk about Nikola Jokic and his game, because I feel like this is my question is he going to bring the big man back? Because this is in the 3-point era, in the Steph Curry era, everybody worried about 3-pointers. He went back to old school basketball, and he can shoot the 3 as well. But I felt like he was down in the post like old school, getting easy baskets, and I feel like it's a lost art to throw it in the post. At the bottom line, bottom line is the closer you are to the rim, the easier it is to score. And I felt like he just took it back to basic basketball sometimes, getting easy baskets instead of the 3-point barrage that we have seen over the last few years. Will he bring the big man back?
Man, I want to make it less about Nikola Jokic and more about Coach Malone. I think the reason that Jokic is so skilled is because if you look at a picture 10 years ago, he was this little short, stubby, chubby kid.
Yes.
Right? So he was throwing up 3-pointers and he was out playing by himself, handling the ball, and he developed the skill of basketball, right? How to dribble, how to pass, and how to shoot. Because it took him a while before he took his growth spurt and ended up being the mammoth person that he is today.
Right.
Now, Coach Malone, it was his responsibility to maximize his ability. And what he did, he looked at the Heat and said, we're going to win inside with you.
Yes.
Period. Yeah. Because you're not going around Bam. You're probably not shooting over the top of him. What I do know, with you being 7 foot and 310 pounds, whatever size you are, you're going to be able to bury him down in the post. So because he's so skilled, he had the right coach with him to put him in position to get the most out of his skill set and that matchup and the advantages that he had. So is he bringing it back? I just think he has a bigger bag than a lot of other 5 men in the league.
I actually think that this can help the big man that need to play down in the post. I won't say that plays down in the post, but that need to play down in the post, because everybody want to shoot threes now. And Jokic, I feel like he shoots the right amount. He only takes 2 or 3 a game.
Yeah.
And, the rest of his field goals is in the paint for the most part. And I feel like some people need to go down in the paint and punish people. i.e. Anthony Davis. And I think he did it, later on, but he got to a point where he was taking a lot of threes. He calmed down more this year, but I feel like it's a lot of players. Sometimes I think Embiid can take too many threes, but get down in the post and use your advantage. But I think he can because I think everything goes in cycles. Everything goes in cycles and trends. And I think them winning the championship and him getting the MVP and the way he dominated, I think he can help out the big man.
Nah, I don't disagree. It's like style, right? Right now, everybody wearing the skinny legs, and in 5 years, we're gonna be right back to the baggy jeans and the too long white tees.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but I couldn't agree with you more. You think of guys like LeBron James.
Yeah.
What if LeBron took his bag and he posted up more?
Man, every time he go to the post, he got whatever he wanted. But that's a whole nother story we can get to, cuz.
That's why I put a lot of the credit, and I may be wrong, and if Jokic seen this, he'd be like, man, the staff at Cleveland State don't know what they're talking about. But I think it was a point of emphasis through that staff and through Coach Malone to say, hey, this is the advantage. Stay disciplined and go eat this way.
Yeah.
No different than a boxer, right? I can get in here, and because I got strong haymakers, I can swing and throw these things. But if I know you don't got a glass jaw, I may have to beat the body up. So don't get undisciplined and keep going after the body. And I feel like that's what Denver did.
I think you absolutely right. You got to give him he is the head coach. You got to give him credit. You got to get and I know they said Nikola Jokic have pulled out his coaching hat on the sideline sometimes, but I think you got to give credit to Mark Malone. And I was kind of hard on him because I thought that he gave Spo too much credit. He gave Spo too much credit, but like you said, you got to give Malone credit. He's the head coach. They got it done. Everybody thought Spo with the zone, and he did this. He inserted Kevin Love, and they was giving all the credit to Spo. But I haven't heard Malone get a whole bunch of credit. You the first person that I've heard through everybody I've been watching to give Malone credit. So I think that's a thing that needs to be done, giving Coach Malone some credit for sure.
Hey, history will give him credit because he's the first coach to ever take Denver to an NBA championship.
That is a fact. That is a fact. Yeah, he probably would never have to pay for a dinner again in Denver for sure.
Forever champ.
I want to talk about Jamal Murray, Jeff Green, and Michael Porter Jr. And the reason why I want to talk about them three is we all know Murray came back from the torn ACL. And we know that he was great in the bubble when they called him Bubble Murray. He had to miss all of last year. Come back, he gets a ring. Jeff Green had heart surgery years back. Been 11 different teams, a journeyman. He's a champion. And then Michael Porter Jr., when he came out, he had all these back problems. And I remember in the draft, when the Bulls didn't pick him, I had some of my guys, man, we should have drafted him. I didn't want them to draft him because it was just coming off the Derrick Rose era. We couldn't deal with another injury, possibly player. So, but he had to miss some time because of the back surgeries, and then he gets a ring. Could you talk about just being able to come back from different injuries and then accomplish a big goal like this?
Injury can. So I'll use my own personal experience first, right? So after the end of my freshman year in college, I played football and I tore my labrum. Right, so I couldn't play in spring ball, and one of my biggest knocks was my speed. So because I couldn't play in spring ball, I still really needed to develop and get better. So the things that I focused on getting better was my foot speed, right? So I stayed on the ladder. I did cones. I got in and out of drills. I did everything that was possible for the duration of spring ball every time we had practice for the entire time. And naturally, because of it, to this day, I can get in and out of a cone with the best of people,
right,
because I was able to improve that weakness, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing that it does is that it allows you to get your mentality, your goals, the things that are important, that's extra, to improve, right? So I think that's a key piece. I think for Murray, he came on in the bubble and everybody was like, man, you can be really good,
right,
when no fans are there. So for me, I was happy to see him have success while fans were there, because he proved his worth in a big way.
Right.
The other guys, I mean, it's important to recognize like the amount of technology the amount of medical
Yeah.
support, like all the things, like being in the NBA, being in the greatest league in the world, you have every resource in order to get yourself back to a level of excellence, right? And those guys showed a level of discipline to get them there. I'll use LeBron for an example. So as most people know, like I was on staff at Cleveland State with Drew Joyce, right?
Oh yeah.
So Drew Joyce and LeBron are pretty much best friends. As we've seen, the
Right.
movie just came out.
Right.
He said LeBron's discipline is so great that he stretches for an hour a day. And if you've ever been an athlete, one of the hardest things to do in training is to stretch.
Right.
Right? Because it's just an uncomfortable feeling, but after you finish it, then you feel phenomenal. So to do that for an hour every day in season shows great discipline, but you have people around you to help support and get you through those things, and the right systems in place in the medical field to make sure that the best athletes in the world can operate at maximum potential.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if you said it, if you said it at the coaches conference or I heard it somewhere else, but talking about LeBron stretching, how he stretched, like you say, an hour a day. And I remember somebody was saying like, that's why Zion is hurt the way he's hurt because he's not stretching like he needs to stretch. I just know that stretching is important. I know when I stretch, I feel more flexible, more loose, and things of that nature. But nobody likes stretching. I especially when it comes to like yoga stretching. Like, geez, that's a different ball game. But it's definitely important. Last thing I want to talk about is Nuggets going forward. We know they got their core with Murray, Jokic, Porter, Gordon, and Bruce Brown. I think is going to be a free agent. They say Denver only can offer him about 7.5 a year, and people are saying that he probably can get 15 on the market. He said money ain't everything, but his agent probably ain't gonna say that. But how do you like their chances going forward? Because I feel like it's going to be a challenge. I know they won the championship, but I think it's going to be tough. It's already tough to repeat, but it's so much competition in the West. How do you like their chances going forward?
Man, I like it because when you get your core of continuity back, man, it is like it's hard to replace experience. So having investigated the roster enough to just be able to say these are the moves that they need to make. But at the same time, I think it's important for you to know, like, man, when you get Jokic, Murray, Porter Jr. back, like you have a nucleus. It's no different. You look at the teams around the league. Just look at Boston.
Yeah.
Like Boston's kept that nucleus together for almost 5 years, and they continue to get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important that you take your primary guys that's in your system and build around them. So what they'll do, those other guys will go get paid from the success that they had this year, but that nucleus stays together, and they'll go find complementary people who are willing to fill those roles, and they'll sit down as an organization and say, this is what we did to win. If you can't be a part of this, then maybe this is not the best place for you.
I think if they lose Bruce Brown, that's going to be a tough loss. He's like instant offense, instant energy off the bench. He defends. I think that would be a tough loss. Some people is just hard to replace. They just glue guys, and I think he's one of them. If they can only offer him 7.5 mil and he can get 15 on the market, which one do you think? He says money's not everything. What do you think he's going to do?
Man, you go get your 15.
Facts.
Man, that's simple, right? I mean, you talk about changing. You change the dynamics of your life. You double your pay.
Yeah. Yes.
And as we just talked about injuries, and I mean, we go back. Sean Kemp was one of the best 4 men in the league, and then they had the NBA lockout.
Yes. Yes.
So.
Yes. Tierra says, I wish teams would stay together like the 90s. They ain't paying 90s money no more. They got that money is skyrocketing. I think like a max contract now was close to $300 million, 4 to 5 years, $300 million. So this money is just ridiculous, and nobody is staying if they can get big time money like that. Now that that's over with, like I said, I think it's gonna be hard for them to repeat, but I think they definitely gonna be in the conversation. They should be the favorites coming off the championship. We'll see what that looks like. I want to get back to your story I feel like we didn't get all the way through it last time you was on here, and I wanted to get up to the journey where you're at now at Cleveland State. But I want to go back to when you was head coach at St. Francis, and if you can go back to that moment and talk about your experience there, and then talk about your journey to where you're at now.
Man, if you go, I mean, at St. Francis, it was so many learning lessons, right? It molded who I am as a coach because it gave me so much responsibility.
Right.
Right. It taught you how to be a servant leader. Like I found myself sweeping the floor, setting up the concession stand for summer league, shutting out the lights, cleaning the locker room, washing practice jerseys, right? All those things. So I found the servant leadership aspect of it. I moved forward to being able to hone my fine skills. So, like, we weren't supposed to recruit,
right?
But I was going after high school or going after 8th grade kids that would benefit from an all boys private education, right? And I had to sell that to parents, and it was $12,000 a year to go there. So I became a better recruiter because I was recruiting parents and showing them the value in something that they actually had to put money up for. So I honed those skills.
Before you go forward, let me go back. As you said, as a head coach, and you talked about servant leadership. As a head coach, you were sweeping floors and turning out lights and doing that as a head coach?
Man, I did all those things. You show up in there on a Sunday and you got one custodian that run the whole building. You waiting on him to get the floors clean to where your players don't fall and get hurt.
Right.
Like I learned how to run the Zambino and get the and mop the floor, all those things. So
you just said, hey, you need more manpower. I got to get it done. So I'm just going to do it myself.
Man, one of the biggest things, and even when I left, so I was at a junior college before I got to St. Francis, and I said, man, I'm preparing for when I'm a Division I head coach. So that was my mock trial. So when I walked in, everything that we did at a Division I level. The way we traveled, the way we ate pregame meal, the way we dressed, the way the game day operations went, the way we operated in timeouts during games,
right?
The way we associated ourselves with the media and how we communicated with the media. Like all of those things were put into place from a cultural standpoint, from community service, from academics, from study table, right? All the different areas that went into being a Division I program, I wanted to take pride in, and we did. The challenge that I found was that I was the only coach in the building full time.
Wow.
Right. So I had my head freshman coach at the time, Chris Garillo, who was in the building, but he was an aide, right? So he could only do certain things. Right. I had Storm Stanley, who played at Toledo St. Francis, and he was a 7-footer that played at St. Francis, Brooklyn, I believe, as a Division I player who came back. But he was a social studies teacher, and he was only there for 2 years. Right. So consistently over my 9-year stretch, it was me.
Wow.
Now, my other coaches got there at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock.
Right.
But in order, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So I wasn't able to, like, say, all right, during the day, we're going to be high school. But when 3:30 get here, now we're going to go be a Division I program.
Wow.
No, those things were done throughout. I mean, we had visits. So we had this thing called a night for a day. I'll have an 8th grader come and be in the school all day. And I pick who he's going to go to classes with. He come down, he sit down and go through a developmental plan with me in my office. I go to lunch and I sit with the team and do those type of things.
Wow.
Man, for 9 years, I cooked every pregame meal for my varsity.
What?
But because
you a custodian, you a cook.
I mean, you gotta get creative. Now, I will say some of the cook stuff, special thanks and shout out to Costco. Maybe I can get a coach's NIL for Costco.
Right.
Where they had things that could expedite the pregame meal process that our guys liked, but man.
Wow, so you had to cook meals for your team. It wasn't in the school budget?
To purchase the food was in the school budget. So, and that's where you say you learned how to coach, right? I had a guy, and I ain't gonna say his name on air because I don't want people reaching out to him, but he would give me $5,000 a summer for our summer program. Okay. He would give me $1,500 during the year to get meals for the varsity throughout the year, right? So I learned how to work with alumni. My wife and I, a couple summers, would go up 4 hours away to Traverse City and go on like beer canoeing trips and hang out with them and do things to say your value to the school is so important, right? So now we were making the institution better. As a freshman program, we kept 2 freshman teams, right? We kept a freshman A team and a freshman B team. But my best freshman played JV. And I told my freshman coaches, the sole purpose of my freshman program is for these kids to have so much fun, they all come back to school as sophomores because ain't none of them ever going to play basketball again. Right? So now you're learning how to fall in alignment with what the institutional goals are, and you keep enrollment high and you keep kids coming. Like those things were gained and learned over 9 years. So now when you get to Cleveland State, you understand being in alignment with the engineering department, right? Yeah. Being in alignment with the group that does the voting, those type of things. So it's just it was a melting pot for education for me.
So after head coach St. Francis, Toledo is next. It was that next.
I left from there and went to. I was 6 months as a real estate agent, and then I went to Cleveland State.
Okay, could you tell the story that you told at the coaches conference, because it was amazing to me, and I felt like it was some a spiritual aspect to that as well. Could you just recap that story that you told at the coaches conference about how you got to where you at now?
Man, you talk about the spiritual aspect of it, and it's so crazy because when I accepted the job at Cleveland State, it was the lowest paid job I had ever received. And my wife and I were staying at my in-laws, were at my in-laws at the time. And I put my head in her lap and I cried. And then she was like, man, come out. We got to celebrate. And when I walked out in the kitchen, I continued to cry.
Right.
And she was like, come out on the patio. Like, you got to cheer up. And I'm like, it's not a cheer up. It's like, man, everybody says you move in a certain way for a certain reason. And it was like, man, when I was a kid, I'd have to go to church every Sunday, and I get to Sunday school. And then after Sunday school was over with, it'd be like an hour to eat. And then I eat. And then when church was over with, then I go home to my mom. And it was every Sunday. And I'm like, man, you never get a day to sleep in. Right. So when I graduated high school and I got to college, I'm like, man, I believe in God, but I ain't going to church like that. Like, I'm churched out. Right.
Right.
Well, as time progressed and life kicked up, I also didn't stay. I was connected with God, but I had a relationship with him, but I wasn't connected to him.
Right.
So when things played out, and I'm talking backwards now, but when things played out, I ended up in a position where it was like, man, had that connectivity been stronger earlier, maybe I would have been here a long time ago. But God ain't let me down. And it had nothing to do with the price or the position. It was the state of mind of like, man, when you think this over, you can't dictate if it is or if it isn't. Right? So I'll tell you, I had a lot of success at St. Francis. My last year was the COVID year. Our conference was split with half public schools and half private schools. And when COVID happened, the county shut down public education and public involvement in public schools. So only half of the schools, so only the private schools could still continue to play basketball through the season. And my roster was compiled of 2 Division I players, a Division II player, and 2 Division I football players. We were picked to win the conference, and some people said if you didn't win state, it was a bust.
Right.
So I was like, man, we got to continue to play.
Right.
1, because I got my best team ever, and 2, because we want to have a chance to win a state championship. We don't care how it is. It can be how the Lakers won it in the bubble. Let's go get it.
Right.
Well, what happened was that half of our games got erased. So when that happened, we couldn't find anybody but the best teams in Ohio to play. Right.
Right.
If you were a 500 program and I called you to play, like, man, coach, respectfully, we ain't playing y'all. Y'all ain't coming up here to beat us.
Right.
But if you were one of the top 10 teams in the state and I called you, like, man, we finally found someone. Let's rock.
Right.
We ended up going. So long story short, we ended up going 12-10. At the end of the year, our president, who was a new president from who hired me, our principal, who's a new principal from who hired me, and I found out how important it is to be in alignment with your administration. Right? They called me in and they said, hey, coach, we want to let you know we're not going to bring you back next year. I was like, it was a strange stop. And I said, why?
Right.
Like, we feel like the program plateaued. I said, we feel like the program plateaued. He said, yeah, we feel like the program plateaued. So we finished second in the conference.
Right.
We got 3 kids going Division I.
Right.
And we probably return our second best roster ever next year. But if you feel like at the top is plateauing, I'm fine with that. Right? So long story short, that was over. I leave. I get home. I tell my wife, I say, it's time for the next journey. And that was March 1st. And during my 9 years, I had multiple opportunities to take college jobs. But it was paying like $35K. It was a Division II assistant in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi.
Right. Right.
It was $18K. Like it was a video coordinator volunteer. And I'm like, man, I got a family. I got kids. I got a wife. I got a mortgage. Like, I'm not changing our lifestyle to chase basketball because I'm more interested in changing lives. Right? Like, if you change a kid's life, I'm more interested in that than I am of like changing the lifestyle of my family to chase a job or a career.
Right.
So when I got let go, I was like, man, now's the time. So March 1st, I give myself until August 1st. And on August 1st, if I don't have a college coaching job, I'm going to get into the real world. I got to stop chasing this dream.
Right.
So like March 15th, I get a phone call. Me and my wife, I think we were day drinking, right? I was off. It was like vacation. I had more time than I had ever had, right? It's the middle of the day. We're going Fridays to the patio. We're going to have a couple's day out, the kids in school.
Right.
I'm like, man, it's a weird Florida number calling me. So I look and I pick it up. I'm like, hello? I say, Coach Lewis? Like, yeah, what up, Coach? Who is this? Like, man, that's Coach Dennis Gates, head coach at Cleveland State. And I tightened up real quick. I was like, oh, Coach, how you doing, man? Praise the Lord. Hey, what's good? Right? So as we talk, he like, tell me this plan, tell me the position he has in place. At this time, nobody knows I'm getting let go because they're not going to announce it until April 1st. So I'm like, if I can get this to happen now, then I'm good. Like, I don't even got to talk about how it happened.
So right now, as far as they know, you still employed.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, go ahead.
So we talked. He said, man, you know, I'm like, yeah, I'll come talk to you, Coach. He hadn't talked numbers or anything. So we get off the phone. I'm excited about it. I don't hear back from Coach Gates until August 1st.
Wow.
Right? So he went dead.
So that's March to August.
March to August, I ain't hear from him.
Wow.
So during that time, I interviewed at Eastern Michigan, my alma mater. Right? Thought I was going to get that job. I didn't get it. I interviewed for a head NAI job in the Detroit area where I had strong recruiting ties. I didn't get it. I interviewed for an assistant job over in the Midwest. I didn't get it. So now it's moved to July. And in July, we went on a family vacation. We went down to Hollywood, Florida with the family. We took my wife's family, bought an Airbnb. As soon as we landed, I get a phone call and they say, hey, your grandma just had a stroke. I'm like, man, what? They was like, yeah, we don't know how bad it is. We don't really know what's going on. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, we just got here. Keep me updated. If things go south, I'll get there. Family get there fast as they can. If not, when we finish vacation, I'm going to fly straight to y'all. So we get through vacation and I get the phone call that she's in stable condition. So the family fly back. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm about to go down to Houston and check my grandma out. At this time, I get down there. And because, like I said, for 6 months, I did real estate. I was flipping houses and I was just doing it off of YouTube, how to invest or putting them back on the market.
Right.
I knew how to do things, right? So I get down there and they said, man, she may not be as mobile. We may need to knock a wall out in her house, open something up, do something different. So I say, man, let me go down here and at least see. So as we talking to contractors, I can speak the language. So I'm down there for 3 days. I enjoy my family. It's dope. It's time to go back, right? Everything's stable. Did what I needed to do in order to help Grams out. And I get on the plane. I talk to my wife. I'm talking to her before I get ready to fly back. I'm like, man, let's move to Texas. And I'm just joking. And she's like, let's do it. I'm like, for real? She's like, yeah, let's do it. I said, all right, well, when I get there, we turn around. We coming back if you serious.
Right.
So I land in Detroit. I drive over. I've been home like 12 hours. She's serious. I said, let's go this weekend. We buy flights. We fly to Texas. We spend the whole weekend. We house hunting. So we just looking for houses. Couldn't find a house. Hung out with the family, had a good time, enjoyed each other. It was just us two. So The very last house, the day I was time to go to the airport, my auntie called me. She said, hey, over in Conroe is a house. I want you to go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So we drive over. It's the last house we see. Instantly, this the house for us.
Right.
Dope. Wide stairway, high cathedral ceilings,
Right.
big bedrooms, walk-in master closet, phenomenal neighborhood. Like, it was a $5 million house across the street.
Mm-hmm.
This where we want to be. Only thing we ain't have was a pool. Like, man, we here. Let's do it. So we talked to the real estate agent. She like, write a note. So I wrote a note, did everything, put the offer in. We drive from there to the airport. We get to the airport. She said, I'll let y'all know in the next couple of hours if you have it or not. So we talk. We get to the airport. We fly. We land. I turn my phone on, and congratulations, confetti going everywhere. You got an accepted house.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's Friday. We put our house up for sale. It's sold in 12 hours.
Wow.
So now we got 2 days to get out of our house.
Yeah.
Right? Now it's like July 28th now, right? It's July 28th. So August 1st is coming. That deadline is coming.
Right.
Once I found out my grandmother had a stroke, I kind of gave up on it. So I'm like 2 weeks past, not even thinking about closing the coaching part out the right way.
Right.
So we pack up the house. We put it in a U-Haul, park the U-Haul at my in-laws' house, take our mattress, put it in their living room. We're going to be there for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a basketball rim left at our house that I needed to go pick up in my truck. And I went by myself. My family had came with me, and I went by myself. So when I pull in, I loaded up. And because I had flipped our house, my in-laws did the painting. I did the floor. My wife helped me tear stuff. Like, we did it ourselves. We put our hands, feet, elbows, and knees into the house.
Right.
And I walked around it, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Kind of like Martin and Gina when Martin was over, and he kind of like was there looking. Yeah. I was like, man, it's one of them moments. So I walked into the garage, and I had a moment by myself, and I said, God, man, don't let me put my family in a bad situation. If we're not supposed to go to Houston, don't let me go to Houston. I said, when we get down there, make sure that what's necessary for us to be successful goes in the right direction.
Yes.
Right? And I pull off, get in the car, like kind of had to tighten up a little bit, no tears, no nothing. I get in the car, I pull off, I get back to the house. It's probably 11 o'clock at night. It's July 31st. So me and my wife lay down. We going to sell our house, sign off on it at 9 a.m. Monday morning.
Right.
So we lay down, man. It was 8:15, August 1st. And when I opened my eyes, not even to the alarm, I look at it, and it says Dennis Gates with 3 bubbles. I'm like, man, I'm getting a text message. And the text message says, hey, Coach Lewis, sorry I hadn't got in touch with you. I have some things going on. Can you give me a call? I want to get with you and the family. And I just threw it at my wife. Like, we landed in my in-laws' living room. I threw it out. I said, look at this shit, man.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
So then I called him immediately. I'm like, Coach, what's up? He was like, man, I wanted to follow back about our conversation. I said, Coach, man, I'm moving to Texas on Thursday. If you wanted me to be at Cleveland State, we need to talk soon.
Right.
He said, when can you come? I said, I can come today or tomorrow. He said, bring the family up tomorrow. So we bring the family up, and we sit down. Me and Coach Gates sit down and talk. Me, Coach Gates, my wife, my boys. The boys leave out. They go with DeLon King, our assistant Dobo at the time, who's doing a phenomenal job at Missouri right now. He take the boys out to shoot. Me and my wife stay there and talk. And I'm almost in tears. He's just saying, like, man, the reasons you ain't got chances, the values that I see in you. Like, and she looking at me like, man, I've been telling them that. Like, these are the things that's important. And I'm like, man, it's crazy. So we get in the car. And when we get in the car, I'm like, man, I can't make this decision for me.
Right.
The job ended up paying $35K. I was making $120 as a high school coach and doing real estate. Like, it was raking it up. Like, that's too big of a gap to put my family in a position. And not to mention, my wife had got a contract in Houston making $6,000 a week as a travel nurse. So we wasn't just talking about like not moving to Texas. We were talking about taking a huge financial cut.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's a big difference.
So I said, hey, Houston or Cleveland, y'all decide. And I gave all of them a piece of paper. And all 3 of them wrote down Cleveland. I said, well, we're going to Cleveland. So when I called my college coach, I said, Coach, man, what do you think? Like, the family liked it, whatever. I think I'm going to tell them tomorrow. He's like, why you didn't tell them tomorrow? Tell them today. That's really what you want to do. So I told him today. He called me back. He offered me the job. And like I told you, I got into that moment. But it was like, man, the thing that it took me back to was that conversation I had with myself in that garage. And I said, God, don't let me put myself in a position that's going to harm, hurt, or not help me and my family.
Yes. And
Right.
that's the biggest reason I wanted you to tell this story, because I remember hearing it at the coaches conference, and I remember that you telling this story, and then the moment that you said that you got the message from Dennis Gates, and it was like God giving you that sign, like when you asked for it. And it's like my thing is, I always would like to tell people at the end of shows, a lot of them is, I usually try to give them a scripture or something, but if I can hear a story like this, like it don't have to be a elaborate prayer or anything. Like it can be simple as, God, don't let me put my family in a bad position, and He can come through just like He just came through for you, and you was able to make a decision off of you just uh basically asking God not to put not for you to put the family in a bad position. And I thought that was good. I want to ask you, why do you think your family chose Cleveland over Houston? Is they just they like Cleveland more? They more familiar, or they just like
No, I think so. The majority, the foundation of my family lives in Houston or
okay.
Beaumont, right? 90-mile radius, right? So we were going to be around my family,
Yeah.
which my boys love my aunties, they love my grandma, they love my uncles, right? And here we have been with my wife's family for so long. But I do think, and there's two things that I want to touch on. The first is I do think DNA is very important, right? And the environment that you are in and that you grow up around has an impact on how you operate and how you think.
Mhm.
My journey of running a Division I program at the high school level, my kids were able to be a part of wholeheartedly.
Mm.
Right. So my middle son now was a newborn when I took over at St. Francis, and my oldest was 2.
Wow.
So they knew standing behind the bench, right, during big games. Like we
Right.
sold out a game with 5,000 people in 12 minutes
Right.
when I was a high school coach. Like it was insane. They were a part of that environment, right? My wife, like I talked about at the clinic, she top 10 in scoring history as a point guard at the University of Michigan.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
My brother-in-law and I won a semi-pro national championship in football.
Mhm.
My father-in-law played on the only undefeated team in the University of Toledo history with the quarterback that played in the CFL, the first black quarterback in the CFL. Right? So we have a history of athleticism and competitiveness in our DNA.
Right.
So I think for them to walk into an environment where Dennis Gates did a great job, he's a phenomenal recruiter. He recruited the shit out of us. Like, and I'm forever grateful for how hard he recruited us to be there.
Right.
But for them to like, man, we get to be in this environment around these people, big time. Right? So it was great. I think when I go, so that's the one piece of why they chose Cleveland.
Mhm.
But I want to go back to what you said as far as like, man, it got to be a simple prayer, what you ask for. Like, God, don't put myself in a bad position.
Right.
I think one thing I've learned from this journey is that you have to be willing to accept what you ask for.
Mm.
Because it's not, don't put me in a bad position, but make sure I also make this amount, I live this way, I do this. Because while he put me in position to follow my dream on August 1st,
Right.
like I got this opportunity on August 1st, the last day of what I put a limit on myself for.
Right.
But it didn't come as an easy decision.
Right.
It came with a pay cut. I mean, for a year, I drove back and forth to Toledo and had an apartment downtown Cleveland and was away from my family. It was
Mm.
the first time I didn't put my kids to bed every night.
Mm.
Right? It was the first time that me and my wife had truly been separated from each other for a long period of time, to where now we had to understand how to operate at a distance.
Wow.
Right?
You
So you can't like, man, now I'm praying and I'm hoping that moving forward, that the sacrifices that we made
right.
is going to multiply from a
Yeah.
financial, from a material, from a just living situation tenfold.
Right. Right.
Right. But you can't, but what I asked for, I got. Now I got to be able to navigate those circumstances. Some people lose the faith because they was like, man, God ain't, no, man. What you asked for, you're going to get.
Man, you said a mouthful. And I just think about anything great happens, it usually takes a sacrifice. And for you to have to drive, be away from the family, do those type of things, that's a sacrifice. That's a sacrifice of you, sacrifice of your wife, your family. Um, And I always look at a lot of the great stories that you hear that people tell. Usually, it was a sacrifice, some type of way. And then if I bring it all the way back just to Jesus, um, he had to sacrifice his life so we can have eternal life, the biggest sacrifice. So I just look at anything that happens that's going to happen great usually requires a sacrifice. But before we get up out of here, could you talk about your wife following you through this whole journey? Because that can be uncomfortable. That can be uncomfortable, and the wife have to be 10 toes down. And like you say, if y'all was living a certain way, if I could just speak on experience, like it ain't easy for a wife and a family to dramatically change their lifestyle and just follow like that. Could you just talk about how that went and how she followed you this whole time?
Man, I can say she been 10 toes down, 2 feet, knees in the dirt down. Right. From day one though. Like people were like, man, I got married at 27. We got engaged when I was 25. We've been together since I was 23.
Mm,
My wife been with me since she was 19 years old.
right.
Right. And when I decided to play, I wasn't a first or second round draft pick. Like I did some professional workouts, but majority, like I played overseas in a couple stints, and I did arena that was getting $400 a week or whatever. And during my journey of trying to be a professional, she was still in college, and she not once ever asked me for a dime to when I came home to help pay for rent. She
Hmm.
never, not ever once asked me to pay for a meal if I didn't have it.
Right.
Right. So when I got back, I was like, man, you have to recognize what's in front of you. That's a blessing. And I'm like, man, that's my wife because I know she down.
Yeah.
Man, we can have fun together. We can laugh together. We can compete against each other. Like we got like-minded personalities. Her family is phenomenal. Where they had great Christmas celebrations, great Thanksgiving celebrations. They helped me with open arms. So from day one, I always knew she was down.
Yeah.
But it's not until you consistently get a pattern of a way life goes, and then all of a sudden that's rocked.
Mm,
Right. Not only did she have to take care of the kids, she had to continue to work. She working on her master's in nursing, working on a nurse practitioner, working on all these things that she still want to achieve. She was
right.
living with her parents,
Right.
right? On top of me going away. Like during the time where it was easy to lose the faith, lose the trust, lose herself within things, man, she anchored down.
Right.
She
Right.
anchored down. And I could never verbally express how grateful I am for her.
Yes.
Right? Because the way like actions speak so loud, and even like to be able to do it in reverse, because we talked about it earlier that she loves so hard,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Some people say, do you love me because it make you feel good, or do you love me because it make me feel good?
Mm,
Right? Some people can be in love with you because you bring them their excitement.
right.
She truly in love with me because she want to see me grow and go.
Man.
So to
Man.
be able to express and show that, man, that's not an easy task when you got somebody that I mean, I wish I could love her as much as she loved me.
That's good stuff right there, man.
Right. And to show it though, to let the world know, like that's an everyday task.
I
So
love I loved your story, and I had to get it back on here again, man, because when I heard it the first time, man, and I felt like we got more this time. We got we was out chilling Fridays, you know. I felt like I got more details than we got because I guess you only had you had a certain way you had to do your speech, talk about basketball, this and that, but we was able to get all the ins and out of the story, man. And I just appreciate you coming back, talking the sports, and then sharing this story, man, because I think it's a story that people can relate to. And for people who are going after something, they can take something from it. And my favorite part is the moment when you just talked to God and just asked him not to let you put your family in a bad position. And the deadline that you set that exact day, how everything just happened, man. So like I say, I usually give a scripture of the day, but my scripture or words for you is just, you heard his story. If you have a situation that you're wrestling with or anything like that, I would encourage you to include God in your decision and ask him what you would want to do, and just include him in everything that you do. Coach Lewis, brother, I appreciate you coming back, man, sharing your story, having some fun with me, talking these NBA finals. Um, I look forward to seeing you doing great things in the coaching. You spoke it last time on the show. You're gonna be a head coach somewhere soon, and I'm gonna be at a network somewhere doing big things as well. So you already spoke it, man. I expect it to happen.
Yeah, man. The only thing I'll say to close it out, man, is one, forever grateful for Dennis Gates for getting me into the profession, right? Giving me a chance, and forever grateful for Danielle Robinson and making me a valuable part of his staff. And then, man, just don't be great by yourself. You diminish your impact.
Black Butterfly Pod checking in, says School of Norris Cole, Cleveland State plays UWM all the time. Before we get up out of here, can you speak? I know, I think, do Norris Cole still come back time to time? Have you met him? Have you talked to him before? Can you share anything on Norris Cole?
Man, Norris is my guy. He from Dayton. He just got inducted into the Hall of Fame during the season. This past weekend, he got inducted into the Ohio Hall of Fame. He sat courtside during the conference tournament. He show up and talk to the guys all the time. When he was in the G League and came over, like him and my son worked out together and he shot with him. Man, Norris is a phenomenal person. Like, he's a champ, right? He won a championship with the Heat, so he is a champ,
Yes.
right? One of the best basketball players ever, but more importantly, man, he's a phenomenal person.
There you go, Black Butterfly Pod. So you got some Norris Cole nuggets right there for you, man. That's a great supporter, always asking and having some great comments, man. So listen, it's past our time a little bit. Once again, I want to thank our guest, Cleveland State assistant coach Travis Lewis. Y'all look forward to him doing big things in the future in the coaching arena. And I just appreciate that, brother, for coming back, doing this again. Great story, and sharing your story again, man. I appreciate you.
Man, all love, baby.
We're about to get up out of here. We will see y'all next Tuesday. See you later.
Hello, Allen Pants.